Have you ever had a moment so small, so ordinary, that it shouldn't have broken you? Yet somehow, it shattered everything you thought you knew about your own family? Because that's where my story begins. And if you're new to Venge Tale Story, make sure you subscribe. Trust me, you'll want to hear how this ends. My name is Evelyn Brooke. And for most of my life, I wasn't the daughter in the spotlight. I wasn't even the daughter in the shadows. I was the daughter who blended into the wallpaper. I grew up in Manchester, in a semi-detached house where laughter echoed louder for one child than the other. My younger sister, Isla, was sunshine with teeth. The kind of girl people described as magnetic. Pretty, loud, effortlessly charming, and exhausting. Me? I was quiet, steady, the one who never caused trouble. The one who didn't need attention, my mother's favorite joke. Thank God one of you came out low maintenance, she would say. She'd laugh. Everyone would laugh. And I would pretend it didn't sting. But wounds don't disappear just because no one acknowledges them. Some wounds learn to wait. The years went by, and Isla's life looked like a highlight reel she curated for the world. High-paying job, golden friends, Instagram-perfect boyfriend. The boyfriend who became her fiancé. And then came the message. She was getting married at a historic estate in Surrey, a place so grand she described it as royal adjacent. Only Isla would use that phrase without irony. The morning of her wedding, I sat on the train from Manchester for 3 long hours, replaying her last text again and again. Evie, please behave. No drama. Don't ruin my day. I wasn't planning to. I don't think I ever had. But something about that text felt like a bruise pressed by the person who put it there. When the train finally pulled into Surrey, I stepped off and followed the crowd of well-dressed guests toward the estate. The building rose like something out of a period drama, ivy climbing stone walls, spiral chimneys, massive iron gates. The kind of place where people whisper about lineage, money, and legacies that don't include girls like me. Inside, everything smelled like roses and generational wealth. Staff darted around arranging bouquets, guests laughed over champagne, and I stood there with a small wooden box in a gift bag, something I had carved myself. Something personal. Something meaningful. Something Isla would probably toss out after the ceremony, but I had brought it anyway. A wedding coordinator walked toward me, tablet in hand, her smile tight enough to crack. Name: Evelyn Brooke. She scanned her list, and her expression flickered. Oh, yes. Miss Brooke. Your seat is, outside. For a moment I thought she misspoke. Outside? Outside where? In the garden? The terrace? Somewhere pretty? I followed her through a narrow service corridor and she gestured toward a tiny bistro chair placed beside the staff door, directly overlooking the outdoor bins. The chair wobbled when I touched it. There wasn't even a cushion. There must be a mistake, I whispered. She only offered that brittle, professional smile. This is where you've been assigned. I could see the ballroom through a narrow glass panel, the chandeliers glowing like constellations, the guests swirling in designer outfits, the floral arch dripping orchids, the life I was apparently too forgettable to be part of. I sat down slowly, the cold draft creeping under my dress. A cleaning cart squeaked beside me, stocked with bleach and stale cloths. Staff members rushed past me, barely noticing I existed. And maybe that was the point. I stared at the doorway to the ballroom, where music swelled as more guests arrived. Every time the door swung open, I caught glimpses of relatives I hadn't seen in years, laughing at tables where my place should have been. My chest tightened, a familiar ache rising like an old ghost. I thought I could swallow the humiliation. I thought I had swallowed so much over the years that one more thing wouldn't hurt. I was wrong. Because then Isla appeared. She looked like the cover of a bridal magazine. Flawless hair, glowing skin, a dress that probably cost as much as my yearly rent. She walked with that confident, breezy stride she'd mastered since childhood, the kind that said the world would always rearrange itself for her. When she saw me, she didn't look surprised. That was the part that stung the most. She stepped closer, her smile bright for the guests watching nearby. When she reached me, her face cooled into the expression I knew too well, polite contempt, wrapped in sisterly sweetness so nobody else could accuse her of being cruel. "Evie," she whispered, looking down at me as if I were a child who'd spilled juice on a white carpet. "Don't look so wounded. We just didn't want you in the photos." Just as if that softened the blow. As if excluding me was some kind of rational decision. Her perfume lingered for a second as she turned away, her veil trailing behind her like a comet. She didn't even wait for my response. I stared after her, numb at first, then burning from the inside out. Not angry. Not yet. More like something inside me was waking up, something I had pushed down for too long. I looked down at the gift bag resting against my leg. The small wooden box I'd carved myself, delicate patterns along the lid, a hidden latch, hours of work, suddenly felt like a relic from a different life. A life where I still believed Isla valued me, even a little. I closed my eyes. And whispered, almost without meaning to, "Not today." Because humiliation can do something strange to a person. It can break them. Or it can change them. In that icy corridor, beside a cleaning cart and the scent of bleach, I felt the shift. It was quiet. But it was irreversible. And if you think being shoved outside the family photo was the worst thing my sister did that day, you're not even close. This wedding held a secret I didn't know yet. But you, the listener, will learn it before I do. And once you hear it, everything that happens next will make perfect sense. Before we return to Evelyn sitting alone beside the cleaning cart, before the humiliation that cracked something deep inside her. You need to know a truth she doesn't. A truth that has been growing in silence, like a fuse burning toward an explosion. Because 3 weeks before that wedding day in Surrey, something happened in London. Something small, almost accidental, yet powerful enough to destroy every vow spoken beneath those chandeliers. And you, the listener, will know it long before Evelyn does. It began with Isla, of course. Isla, who had always treated romance like a business transaction dressed in silk. Isla, who believed love was a tool rather than a treasure. She wasn't marrying Nathan Aldridge for love. She wasn't even marrying him for companionship. She was marrying him for real estate. The Aldridge family wasn't royalty, but they might as well have been. Old money, new money, money in places that didn't even have names yet. Nathan was the gentle one, the one everyone assumed would marry a woman as kind as he was. But people like Nathan often attract the opposite. People who see softness as a resource to mine. Isla had a plan. A plan she had crafted with the same precision she used for everything she wanted. Nathan had inherited a townhouse in Chelsea, a historic building with iron balconies and a courtyard shaded by flowering vines. A place where generations of Aldridges had lived, loved, and grown old. And it was this house Isla wanted. Not the marriage. Not the man. Just the property. One evening, 3 weeks before the wedding, that plan slipped into the wrong hands. And it happened by accident, the kind of accident fate loves. Nathan had gone to meet friends for dinner. Isla had gone out too, claiming she needed to clear her head before all the wedding chaos. Her real intentions didn't matter. What mattered was that she left her tablet on the living room sofa, screen unlocked, battery low but still flickering with notifications. And Chloe Aldridge, Nathan's younger sister, walked in at exactly the wrong moment. Chloe was 18, bright-eyed, and fiercely protective of her brother. She adored him the way people adore the one person in the family who never makes them feel small. Nathan had always been her anchor. The steady one. The one who helped her with homework, who stood up for her when relatives criticized her choices, who believed in her photography dreams when no one else did. She had never trusted Isla. Something about Isla's smile felt calculated. Like she was always looking for the next advantage. So when Chloe walked past the sofa and saw the tablet light up with message previews, Isla's name at the top of the chat, her steps slowed. It wasn't snooping. It was instinct. A part of her whispered, "Don't look." Another part whispered, "Look. Please look." What she saw wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't out of context. It was the truth written in Isla's own words. Honestly, Nathan is so easy to manage it's almost boring. If I play this right, he'll sign the house transfer papers after the honeymoon. It's all about timing. I'll make him think it was his idea. And then the voice note. Chloe hesitated before tapping it, but she tapped it anyway. If he cries, even better. I'll make him think it's his fault. A chill swept through her so hard she almost dropped the tablet. She replayed the voice note once. Twice. A third time, tears stinging her eyes. This wasn't greed disguised as ambition. This was cruelty. Cold, sharpened, intentional cruelty. Chloe's breathing went thin. Her mind raced. Every moment she'd seen Isla kiss Nathan's cheek like a trophy. Every time Isla called him sweet but slow. Every moment she dismissed Chloe with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. It all clicked. Chloe screenshotted everything. Her fingers trembled as she saved each screenshot, terrified the screen would lock or Isla would walk in or her own conscience would stop her. Then she forwarded the evidence to her phone, deleting the sent messages from the tablet to hide her tracks. Her heart pounded against her ribs like it wanted out. But knowing the truth and knowing what to do with it, those are different battles. Chloe stared at the evidence on her phone that night, sitting on the edge of her bed. Telling Nathan would break his heart. He had been heartbroken before, devastatingly so. The kind of heartbreak that makes a person lose weight, lose sleep, lose color in their voice. Chloe had watched him rebuild himself after years of being emotionally drained by a previous partner. He had only just started laughing without flinching. Could she destroy him again? Could she wait? Could she stay silent? She didn't know. The next morning, she woke up with the decision still twisting inside her like barbed wire. She almost told him at breakfast. Almost told him again when he left for work. Almost sent him the screenshots at midnight. But fear is a strange puppeteer. Convinces you that silence is mercy. Convinces you that hesitation is protection. So Chloe said nothing. And that hesitation, so human, so relatable, so tragic, did not stay small. Because little hesitations don't stay little. They grow teeth. And those teeth were coming for the wedding. Chloe didn't know someone else had seen the screenshots on her phone a week later. She didn't know someone had connected, she didn't realize she had scattered. She didn't know her silence wasn't the protective shield she hoped, but the fuse that lit the entire disaster. 3 weeks later, while Evelyn sat outside beside a cleaning cart, humiliated and trembling with the first spark of awakening. This secret was already dripping into the cracks of the wedding day. A secret Isla didn't know had been discovered. A secret Nathan had no idea was circling toward him. A secret Evelyn was completely unaware of. But you, the listener, know now. You know that the wedding wasn't a celebration. It was an ambush disguised in lace and champagne. And all of it, every tear, every betrayal, every terrible truth, was rushing toward that estate in Surrey like the final note of a tragedy no one could stop. But the question isn't just what happens when this secret finally detonates. The real question is, who will be left standing when it does? Stay with me. There are moments in life that change the trajectory of everything that follows. Not loud moments, not dramatic ones, but quiet ones. Moments so small that the world doesn't notice them, yet something in the universe tilts. And for Evelyn Brooke, that moment came from a man holding a single wrapped sweet. But before that, something else happened, something gentle, aching, and almost unbearably human. Because even after Isla humiliated her, even after being placed outside like a forgotten parcel, even after having her dignity scraped raw, Evelyn still chose kindness. That's the thing about gentle people. They keep trying, long after others have stopped deserving it. She waited until no one was looking, stood from her wobbly chair, and walked back into the buzzing hall where guests clinked glasses and gossiped in their designer clothes. She kept her head down. Not out of shame, but out of habit. Years of training tend to do that. At the corner of the room, she approached the towering gift table. Silver boxes wrapped in velvet ribbons, glossy bags bursting with tissue paper, envelopes stuffed with crisp notes from wealthy friends who wanted Isla to notice their generosity. But Evelyn's gift was different. It wasn't expensive. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't meant to impress. It was meant to remind. She placed her handmade wooden box gently, deliberately, right on top of the pile. Not out of spite. Not as an act of rebellion. But so Isla would definitely see it first. Inside the box, cushioned in soft fabric, lay a single photograph. Two little girls standing in a Manchester park. Mud on their shoes. Wind in their hair. Holding hands. Back when life was simple. Back when Isla still looked at Evelyn as her sister, not her accessory. Attached to the photo was a folded note in Evelyn's careful handwriting. We used to be sisters. I hope we can be again. Not a guilt trip. Not a plea. Just the truth of a heart that hadn't closed, even when it should have. For a moment, Evelyn stood there, staring at her own gift. Her throat tightened. Her breath trembled. But she didn't cry. Not yet. She turned and walked back toward the corridor, the forgotten walkway where the draft still slipped beneath the door and the smell of bleach haunted the air. She sat again on her little bistro chair, the metal cold under her palms. She thought she had more dignity than this. But sometimes dignity looks like survival. Sometimes it looks like holding yourself together with trembling hands while everyone else pretends not to notice. She stared at the floor, fighting back the sting in her eyes. That's when she heard it. A slow shuffle of footsteps. The gentle scraping of boots softened by age. She looked up. An old groundskeeper stood before her. Wrinkled face. Warm eyes. Weathered hands that carried decades of stories. His accent had the round softness of Liverpool, a voice that sounded like home even to people who'd never been there. "You all right, love?" he asked. Not the fake concern of someone being polite. Real concern. Human concern. The kind that recognizes brokenness because it has known it too. Evelyn tried to smile, but the expression cracked at the edges. "I'm fine," she whispered. He shook his head, slow, gentle, certain. No one sits in a hallway on a day like this unless someone's broken their spirit. Something inside her flinched. Because the truth has weight, and when someone names your hurt out loud, the weight shifts in a way that almost hurts more. She swallowed hard. Her voice came out thin. "Just family things." He nodded knowingly, leaning his shoulder against the wall as if settling into a familiar story. "Hurt from family cuts the deepest," he said softly. "But remember this. People with gentle hearts always get pushed aside until the day they stop bending." Evelyn looked at him. Really looked. There was something about this man. The stillness in his eyes. The quiet grief in the lines on his face. That made her trust him instantly. He reached into his pocket and placed a small wrapped sweet into her hand. A simple thing. Tiny. Insignificant on its own. But sometimes the smallest kindness drops into us like a stone hitting deep water. The ripples go further than the gesture itself. Evelyn's breath shook as she whispered, "Thank you." The groundskeeper's smile deepened into something soft and certain. "They can't dim a light like yours, love," he said. "One day they'll regret trying." His words settled in her like seeds. Small. Quiet. But alive. And she didn't know it yet, not even close. But those words would become prophecy. Because that wedding, that day, that humiliation, wasn't the end of her story. It was the ignition. It was the first crack in a life that had been curving around other people's comfort for too long. The first sign that something inside her, something fierce, something long neglected, was waking. But kindness has a shadow. A duality. Because the same heart that can hope, can also reach its limit. And when gentle people finally break, they don't break quietly. As the groundskeeper shuffled away, Evelyn sat still, holding the sweet like it was something sacred. For the first time that day, she let a few tears fall. Not from humiliation, but from recognition. Recognition that someone had seen her, truly seen her, and believed she deserved better. But just as that warmth spread through her chest, another thought crept in. A heavier one. A darker one. If a stranger could see her worth so clearly, why couldn't her own sister? And what did it say about Evelyn that she kept forgiving someone who kept cutting her down to size? The moral line blurred then, subtly, quietly, but undeniably. Because forgiveness is noble, until it starts to feel like surrender. And Evelyn, sitting alone in that drafty corridor, didn't realize she was approaching a crossroads. A moment that would divide her life into before and after. But the universe knew. The groundskeeper knew. And soon, you will too. Because while Evelyn held kindness in her hand, serpents were coiling somewhere else in the venue. Secrets were inching toward the surface. And the truth Chloe Aldridge had kept hidden in London was about to collide with everything Evelyn thought she knew about her sister. Kindness may crack something open, but what spills out afterwards isn't always gentle. Weddings are supposed to be moments of harmony, moments where families unite, where love becomes official, where every smile is real, or at least carefully staged. But sometimes a wedding isn't a celebration. Sometimes it's a powder keg dressed in chiffon. And on this day, Isla's perfect, precious, royal-adjacent wedding, the fuse was already burning beneath everyone's feet. Inside the ballroom, everything shimmered. Chandeliers gleamed like frozen rain. Silk drapery flowed from ceiling to floor. Guests mingled, sipping champagne worth more than Evelyn's monthly rent. A string quartet played as though nothing in the world could possibly go wrong. For a moment, it truly looked flawless. Until Isla reached the gift table. You could almost hear the universe shift. She had strutted over with the confidence of someone who believed the world revolved around her. Because for most of her life, Evelyn had allowed it to. But today was different. Today the orbit was about to collapse. She scanned the pile of expensive boxes, then paused when she spotted the wooden one at the top. Evelyn's. Handmade. Unapologetically simple. Isla smirked. Of course Evelyn would make something instead of buying something. Of course Evelyn would gift something sentimental, something dull, something beneath the glossy shine Isla believed the world owed her. She lifted the lid with a theatrical flourish. Perhaps she expected to find something embarrassing. A naive trinket, a childish gesture, something she could mock later to her friends. But when her eyes landed on the photograph inside, she froze. It wasn't scandalous. It wasn't humiliating. It was worse. It was pure. A photo of two little girls holding hands. Before cruelty had names. Before favoritism carved itself into their family. Before Isla learned she could shine by dimming someone else's light. A childhood memory, one Isla had abandoned long ago. She frowned. A photo? Seriously? The disdain dripped from her voice. She tossed it aside as if it were worthless. But then the note slipped out, fluttering to the floor like a wounded bird. Immediately, a guest picked it up. Then another leaned in to read over their shoulder. Evelyn's handwriting. Soft. Hopeful. Unarmored. We used to be sisters. I hope we can be again. Someone whispered. Ah. Another murmured. That's actually sweet. Sweetness. Kindness. Remembrance. All things Isla despised, unless they came from her, unless she controlled the narrative. Her jaw tightened. She hated how the room momentarily softened at Evelyn's act. She hated that anyone might see Evelyn as the better sister. But before Isla could fully twist her face into the sneer forming behind her eyes, Chloe arrived. Chloe Aldridge, small, trembling, gripping her phone as if it might burn through her fingers. Her cheeks were pale. her breath shaky, her fear visible. But she stood at the front of the crowd anyway. I didn't want to ruin today, she said, voice trembling just enough to betray the weight she carried. But I can't let this go on. Not anymore. A ripple went through the guests. Heads turned. Murmurs spread. Nathan looked up from across the room. Concern first. Confusion second. A slow, rising dread third. And Isla. Isla turned white as marble. Chloe, she hissed. What are you doing? But Chloe didn't answer her. She swiped her phone, opened the screenshots, and raised it high enough for the nearest guests to see. A hush fell so abruptly it felt unnatural. Nathan stepped forward. His eyes met the screen, and on it, in unforgiving clarity, were Isla's messages. Every cruel sentence, every manipulative scheme, every confession she thought would stay hidden behind locked passwords and whispered conversations. The crowd inhaled as one. Chloe took a shaky breath. Then, without warning, the projector behind the dance floor flickered to life. Someone had connected the screen to her phone. Maybe accidentally, maybe fatefully, but the result was instant. Suddenly, Isla's own words were stretched across the ballroom in huge, undeniable letters. Easy to manage. Sign the house transfer papers. I'll make him think it's his fault. The string quartet stopped playing mid-note. You could hear hearts breaking. You could hear Isla's life cracking open. No, Isla gasped, eyes wide. No, 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 turn that off. Turn that off. But it was too late. Everyone had seen. Nathan stared at the screen. Pale, shaking, unbelieving. Is this real? He whispered. Isla lunged for the tablet, voice pitch rising in panic. Who brought this? Evelyn. It's her, isn't it? She's jealous of me, she always has been. Her accusation echoed through the hall. The cruelty of it. The desperation of it. But Evelyn wasn't even there. She was still sitting in the corridor, alone, listening faintly to the muffled chaos without realizing it had anything to do with her. Nathan's gaze didn't waver from the screen. His voice broke in front of everyone. Is this really who you are? Isla reached for his sleeve, her voice trembling with a rehearsed softness she hoped would save her. Nathan, please, those were jokes. You know how girls talk. I didn't mean any of that. You have to believe me. But Chloe stepped between them like a quiet shield. No, she said, voice soft but firm. You made him a target. It hit the room like a verdict. Nathan looked down at the wedding ring he was holding, the symbol of every promise he had believed in. Then, slowly, painfully, he let it fall. The sound was small, barely a clink, but it echoed louder than any scream. Guests watched it roll across the polished floor, like a ghost of the future Isla had destroyed with her own hands. Nathan turned away, eyes wet but resolute. I won't marry someone who sees me as a transaction. Isla's face contorted, anger, humiliation, disbelief all clawing through her. Nathan, please, please, you're throwing away everything. But the room had shifted. The spell had broken. Nathan's mother stepped forward. Elegant, composed, devastating. She stopped in front of Isla and whispered just loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. You destroyed yourself, darling. No one else needed to. The silence that followed was suffocating. And in that silence, the truth crystallized. It was over. Not because Evelyn exposed anything. Not because Chloe wanted revenge. Not because Nathan's family sought drama. But because Isla had finally been seen. Truly seen. And the entire ballroom now knew exactly who she was. But this wasn't the end of the story. Not even close. Because humiliation transforms people. And Isla Brooke, the sister who had dismissed Evelyn her entire life, was about to do something no one expected. The train hummed beneath Evelyn like a steady heartbeat, slow, calming, nothing like the frantic chaos she'd escaped hours earlier. The countryside blurred into soft strokes of green and gold outside the window, the kind of scenery people traveled miles to see, but she wasn't really looking at any of it. She was sitting with her arms wrapped around herself, not from fear, but from something that felt dangerously close to relief. Her phone buzzed again. 23 calls. 10 voicemails. 4 messages from Nathan. 2 from Nathan's mother. 1 from Chloe. She let the screen go dark. For the first time in years, she didn't feel obligated to answer anyone. Not Isla. Not family members who only remembered she existed when they needed something. Not people who demanded her softness and returned her loyalty with cruelty. For once, silence belonged to her. A soft announcement crackled over the speakers, something about the next stop, but Evelyn barely heard it. Her mind kept replaying the wooden box she'd placed gently on the gift table earlier, her last thread of hope. We used to be sisters. I hope we can be again. She had meant it when she wrote it, every letter, every breath between the lines. But Isla had tossed that memory aside like the scrap of childhood it was to her. At first, Evelyn thought the sting inside her was heartbreak. But the longer she sat on the train, watching soft clouds roll over the sky, the more she realized. It wasn't heartbreak at all. It was release. She wasn't the villain Isla had tried to paint her as. She wasn't the jealous sister lurking in corners. She wasn't the reason the wedding fell apart, no matter how loudly Isla would scream it in private group chats later. Evelyn had simply walked away. And the truth had detonated on its own. A small vibration shook her phone again, this time a message preview flashing briefly before disappearing. Nathan Aldridge. Your gift was the only honest thing she received today. Thank you for having a real heart. Evelyn inhaled slowly, her breath shaky. She hadn't expected that. Not from Nathan. Not today. Maybe not ever. She tucked her phone into her coat pocket and leaned back, letting her shoulders sink into the seat, letting the tension that had lived in her spine for months finally, mercifully soften. The train curved gently, revealing a line of canals glistening in the afternoon light. She would be home soon. Home, a word that suddenly felt different. Not a place she retreated to. A place she began from. Her phone buzzed again. This time, the preview made her smile. Old groundskeeper. I hope you keep shining, love. The world's brighter when gentle people stop hiding. Evelyn closed her eyes. For a moment, she felt like that single message held more love, more recognition, more genuine care than Isla had ever given her in the last 10 years. Funny how kindness from strangers could stitch up wounds family had carved open. The train pulled into Manchester Piccadilly with its usual distant orchestration of station announcements and shuffling passengers. Evelyn stepped onto the platform with light footsteps, not because the world had suddenly become easier, but because she no longer carried the weight of people who never deserved her. Her walk home was slow and quiet. The city hummed softly around her, cyclists whirling past, distant laughter, the savory scent of chips drifting from a nearby shop. Life moved on. People moved on. And for once, she felt like she could too. When she reached her little flat overlooking the canals, she kicked off her shoes, made tea without rushing, and sat on the fire escape, her favorite spot. Boats drifted lazily under the evening sky, their reflections rippling across the water. Everything felt still. She took a sip of her tea. Warm. Steady. Real. Her phone lit up again, not violently like earlier, but quietly, gently, as if even the universe understood she needed softer things now. A message from Nathan appeared. Not angry. Not frantic. Not pleading. Just honest. Nathan. I'm sorry she hurt you. I'm sorry none of us saw it sooner. If you ever want to talk about today, about Isla, about anything, I'm here. No expectations. Just someone who finally understands. Evelyn read it twice before turning her phone upside down on her lap. Not because she didn't appreciate it, but because she didn't need it. She stared at the water below her feet, her breath forming a small cloud in the cooling air. For the first time in a long time. I'm okay. Those words didn't feel like a lie. They felt like a beginning. Her thoughts drifted to the wedding. She hadn't been there to watch Isla unravel, but she imagined it now. The disbelief, the fury, the blame reaching for her name like an easy target. But the truth had spoken for itself. Chloe had spoken for her. Nathan had finally seen what he'd been blind to. And Isla had finally been confronted by the person she feared most. Herself. Evelyn breathed deeply, watching ripples dance beneath the fading orange sky. She wasn't vengeful. She wasn't petty. She wasn't cruel. She simply existed in her truth. And that, she realized, was enough. As the last of the sunlight dipped below the Manchester skyline, she stood and walked down to the canal path. The air smelled like rain and old brick. She tucked her hands into her coat pockets and whispered to the quiet water. I didn't lose a family. I found myself. The words felt like a soft exhale. A release. A declaration. Then she turned toward the invisible camera, the audience, the listener, the silent witness to her journey, and she stepped closer, her expression warm but steady, her voice calm but filled with something unshakable. Tell me, have you ever been pushed aside by people who were meant to love you? A pause. A breath. A connection. Then she added with a small smile, the kind that feels like both an ending and a promise. If you have, you're not alone. And if you want more stories like this, more justice, more heart, more truth, stay with me here at Venge Tale Story. Subscribe, like, comment, and share your story too. We rise stronger when we rise together. And with that, the screen fades out. Not into darkness, but into something warm, something open, something that feels like the beginning of the next chapter. A future waiting to be told.